Thank you guys, it's amazing. Our wonderful Reverend Janet Childs is doing a memorial service today. All of you just lower your shoulders, let go of the stress. Find that place within you that is free from anger, frustration, disappointment, insecurities, all of those things that you tend to hold on to. Just release them. And so right now what we're going to do is a releasing meditation. And as I go through the meditation, just follow the sound of my voice. Today is a beautiful day. The weather is beautiful. The person sitting next to you is beautiful. The energy in the room is beautiful. And this is the way it should be. Being surrounded by loving and caring people. But most of all, accepting that our God, however you see God, is a part of your life. And as you're walking along today, if you hear something that triggers a negative emotion, just figure out how to release it. And the best way is just to say, I release you, I release you, I release you, and move on. Knowing that negativity tends to breed inside us. But if we release all those things that are causing us to feel dysfunctional, God can handle it. As a spiritualist church, CCL has many healers, but many healers need to be healed themselves. So as you take another nice deep breath, feel the energy in your body being healed by those in this room, being healed by the music that you hear, the energy in your body being so bright and shiny and cheerful and energetic. You're in charge of your feelings. Nobody makes you sad. You become sad. Nobody makes you angry. You become angry. Nobody makes you feel less than you. Every time these types of energies come up, ask Source, ask the Creator to come fill you again with all this positive feeling. Each one of you is such a beautiful, beautiful person. Yet you are not being judged. You are judging yourself. Release that. Release all judgment. So when I say you're a beautiful person, you can say, yes, I am. Because that beauty starts within you, within your heart, within your mind, and within your spirit. Feel that beauty flood over you as God's energy reaches you. And as you feel that, I'd like you to listen to our wonderful James Knight, Sean and Connie Grigsby, as they help you find that source within you to fill you and radiate all through your body. within this room. And I'd like to thank you, Reverend Ronnie, for playing the water bottle. We didn't mean to, but Dr. Eileen and I had barricaded the drums. And so always wanted to improvise. Reverend Sean said, I know what we can do. So this was music by Sparklets. Thank you so very good.
Playing the jelly. Go ahead. You blow across the top of the
We just went back 100 years is all.
And thank you, James. I was so impressed by you just coming in and filling in for Jared. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
James is one of the newest members of the CCL, and he just jumped in with both feet. And it's he gets him early to help set up and he got a brand new keyboard just for us. And,
Yay.
Hey, this is amazing. So,
Which we let him share with other people.
yeah. Well, today's speaker is somebody I've known for a long time. I knew her before she became president of the board of this wonderful. I just about said James Lick. That's a whole different thing. But becoming president of the Billy DeFrank Center takes a lot of energy. She's all over the place. I see her in pictures on my cell phone. I see her in the magazine. I've seen her on television. She's so active with the LGBT community. And we so are impressed by her abilities. And one of the things about her is I love her accent. Unfortunately, she's losing it. She's becoming more Anglophone than Australian. It's amazing. I didn't think we had that much power here in the United States to change somebody's accent, but I think we do. Gabrielle not only works with all of the things that are going on in the LGBTQ community, but she also works with politicians to make them aware of what's going on in the San Jose area. But we have one of the largest LGBTQ community centers in the United States, and I don't know if you realize that. And a lot of it is because of Gabrielle.
Yeah.
She is out there talking about it and doing it. Many of you will see Gabrielle here when we do the AIDS retreat, and you'll see her just about anywhere, because I don't know where she gets all the time, but she is very, very active in the community. But she's also one of those people that when you meet her, you immediately like her. You know, that's such a nice thing to say about people. Have you ever had that where you meet somebody and you go, I really like them, or you meet somebody and you go, I don't know. And have you ever met somebody and you go, I don't think I'm going to like them, you know? Well, Gabrielle, luckily, has this wonderful ability to be likable when you first meet her. And you notice I'm not saying her last name. Because she'll have to tell you what it is. I cannot. I know that it's either Antolovich or Antolovich. I'm not too sure which, and I hate to misspeak that. So, but anyway, please welcome Gabrielle. There you are.
Dun, dun, dun.
Thank you, Dottie. I don't know if I can live up to that.
Oh, just stand there and smile, honey. Oh, you got until you got to see the clock's up there. You've got until 1:15. Okay.
Okay. So, my name is Gabrielle Antolovich.
Antolovich.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I am a first-generation Yugoslavian. And I have to say, you know, sometimes it's really good to know your own history. My father left Yugoslavia in 1941 because the Russians invaded his country. So he wandered all over Europe, and he's actually a genius. He spoke 6 languages, and he was a magnificent man. And then after the Second World War, everyone kicked out the foreigners. because they wanted their own people to have the jobs. Now, does that sound familiar?
Yeah. History repeating itself.
So-
How can that happen?
So what happened is America and Australia wanted immigrants from Europe. They gave them a free ship trip, not an airline trip. This is 1949. Free accommodation and a guarantee of a job with the government for 2 years. Now, doesn't that sound fantastic?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were treated like dirt. The accommodation was disgusting and the jobs were inappropriate. You know, they were jobs that nobody else wanted to do. So, it was for married couples without children. And the waiting list to America was 6 months. They were already pregnant to me. So, they had to go to Australia. And there I was born in 1950. And like many immigrants, my parents had a fantasy of a frou-frou pink tutu girl. And I was not born that way. And I was born knowing who I am. I hated the color blue. I did not want to be a frou-frou girl. I would rip my clothes off if I didn't like them. And, you know, like Europeans, they did not listen to me. So it was a big battle. And children don't understand that maybe fighting is not the only strategy, right? And I feel that with my topic, it began right there and then. I felt hurt because they did not understand me. And so I retaliated. I would rip my clothes off. I would do horrible things. And as we know, it is not the best way to be in the world. You hurt me and I'll hurt you back. And so it's really hard when you have a narrow perception. And children have a narrow perception because they don't understand yet. So I had high anxiety and anxiety attacks. And here's what's so mysterious to me, is that at 6 years old, I don't know if you know about childhood development, but children believe that their parents are God until they're 7 years old. That's when you have to teach them about God, to get them off, you know, that. Because that's when, you know, children normally buck against the parents because they realize they're not God. Well, I bucked against them as soon as I was born. And so I know that there really is some kind of balancing act going on in the universe. So I had panic attacks up until I was 6 years old. And what happened is I had the worst panic attack ever. Everything was moving and I cried out for help. And what happened is, I saw my guardian angel. And I have never had a panic attack since.
Wow.
And the other side effect is I have never ever felt alone, ever. No matter what has happened. You know, love is leaving, you know, that trauma. Whole communities turning on me because they misunderstood everything. I have never felt alone. And that's why I know it was a spiritual experience and not a chemical in the brain. A lot of people have told me that when you have panic attacks, you see flashing lights. And I'm going, yeah, but seeing flashing lights doesn't give you these side effects, like never having a panic attack again.
That's right.
Right. So what I did was I realized, you know, coming from Europe, most of these countries are Catholic, Roman Catholic countries. And my parents did not believe in God. And so they shamed me around my guardian angel. And so I would sneak to church. And this was the first time I started to lie. I would sneak to church, and I was really blessed that the priests and nuns knew how to be with children. And so I learned a lot about spirit as a child, not as an adult. And so I actually believed that I was being mothered and fathered by appropriate people. And so what has happened for me is that, of course, I felt like I was being protected. So I had, I'm a Leo, so of course, I naturally protect others. And so what happened is I realized that, especially my mother tends to be a bully. And then when I got to school, I was the one that protected the kids from the bullies. I was the protector of them. And I discovered the power of supporting others. I do better protecting somebody else than I do protecting myself. Does anyone understand that one? Yes. I will fight for my best friend, whereas I probably wouldn't fight for myself. So that gave me a lot of inner strength, so that when I came out as a lesbian in 1966, I already knew that my life was over. I would never be accepted anywhere. And so instead of feeling bad about it, I was realistic about it. I knew, why strive for something that's going to be taken away from me? So all I had was my identity, which is what I fought for from the beginning. And now I had the gay identity as well, on top of the Gabrielle identity. And so I already knew how to fight for who I am. So now I was in a hostile world, fighting for a part of me that I protected. Now, when I finally found what the word was, lesbian, back then nobody talked about it, so I didn't know what it was. So I go to my parents and I go, hey, I found out I'm a lesbian. And they went, that's nice. And I thought I had their support. So a few years later, when Stonewall happened, I was on the first national TV show in Australia on homosexuality. So what happened is their friends told them what a lesbian was. No. I forgot. My parents did not speak English very well and had no idea what a lesbian was. And that's when my family collapsed and had a major fit. And like so many LGBTQs, I was rejected out of the family. And I'm almost 70 years old now, and my mother just died at 97, never having accepted me. And the truth of the matter is, she didn't like me before she knew I was a lesbian. But her friends gave her permission to hate me because lesbian was bad. Whereas before they used to say, hey, she's your daughter, you should love her even though she's ugly and awful. And so anyway, as you can tell, I got over it a long time ago. And the thing is, being carried by spirit as a 6-year-old, it has carried me through life. I have constantly met people who have loved and accepted me. And so I didn't need my parents, And that's the thing, being open to love wherever love happens, So what happened to me, to sort of get into the topic, as a teenager, You know, a lot of teenagers are pretty awful, and I was pretty awful. My mother had a tendency to shame me in front of my friends. So I would get back at her and shame her in front of her friends. And that's when my spiritual understanding and my actions started to contradict each other. You know, it's like, why am I fighting hate with hate when really I was given a boost of love when I was 6 years old? So how do I fight this horrible negative thing with love? And is it a fair fight? You know, my mother was an adult and I was a teenager. It's not a fair fight because she could kick me out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what happened to me is I started to get involved in the anti-Vietnam War movement. Does anyone remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So what happened, I was a baby dyke of 17, and I was asked to speak at a huge anti-Vietnam War rally. And I started to see, because it was very high up and it was a huge crowd, I could see, and this is when the police and the anti-war movement, you know, ended up in fisticuffs and fighting and horrible things happened. I looked into the crowd and I could see that there were agitators in the crowd that were not part of the anti-war movement. I could tell there was something different about them. And the police were ready for the big fight. So something happened in me, and I started to say, thank you to the police for being at this rally so that we can have a peaceful anti-war rally rather than a violent rally, which is so contradictory to the philosophy. And the police looked up, they went, what? And then everybody else looked around, and I said that there are agitators here who want to make us look bad, and the police get so worked up that they can't tell the difference between the agitators and us. So please look around and step away from people who are not part of the anti-war movement. And I again thank the police for being there. And I watched them with their radio thing, and they were looking around for the agitators, and they got them out.
Yay!
And so then I went into my speech, you know, about peace and love and blah, blah, blah. So what happened, more than 10 years later, I was the only person, well, when Stonewall happened, we all came out publicly gay, you know, all of that. The movement started. And then there was a backlash. With every move forward, there's always a backlash. And what we were able to do was to take homosexuality off the psychiatric and the psychology list. Boom, we were no longer sick. Woohoo! But nobody would hire someone who was openly gay. So all of my friends went back into the closet so they could work, and I did not. So I was the only one that was still out on public, you know, in the public talking and on national television talking about homosexuality, and I couldn't get a job. But I knew there would come a day when me being who I am will be an asset. Well, that day came.
Yeah.
And I am so happy I waited. You know, poverty sucks. And lack of experience in the workforce when you're in your 20s also sucks, because I was unprepared of what it's like to be in a job, but it was worth it. So one of the things that happened is I was known as the gay, right? So in Australia, the people that work with the homeless people, and especially homeless teens, were the Jesuits and the police. And they used to scratch their heads. They didn't understand what happened. And so anyway, I got called in to come out with them to find out what was going on with the teenagers. Because what would happen is they would commit a crime, they would try and arrest the person, and then everyone would jump on the police, and then they ended up getting arrested. Like, what the heck? So I go in, talk to the teenagers, and you will laugh at this. This is in 1979, right? Long time ago. So I go in there, and I said, okay, so what's up? Who's in charge here? And it was a girl.
Yeah.
You see, the police back then they didn't think that a girl would be in charge, right?
Right.
So the thing is, you gotta ask. So the girl in charge. All right. So I said, so tell me, what's going on? And she said that one of my girlfriends slept with one of my boyfriends, and we had a big fight, and we ended up, robbing blah, blah, blah over it because we were so agitated. And I said, so why didn't you tell the police that? That's because they tried to arrest my other girlfriend, and we didn't want her to get into trouble, so we jumped all over him, and he tried to arrest us. And I went, oh, okay. I said, give me a minute. So I walk out, and I talked about, it's like a special diagram, who's with who, and who's in the hierarchy of who's with who. And the poor police officer and the Jesuit, remember 1979, went, oh my God, this is complicated. And I said, no, it's not. Multiple relationships have been going on for centuries. It's just that the Puritans won't believe it and don't understand it. And if you understood it, you would do your job better. And the police officer said, noted. You know how they are. Then he sort of turned around and said, wait a minute. Are you the Gabrielle that was at the anti-Vietnam War rally over 10 years ago? And I said, yeah. He said, oh my goodness. All of us officers were so shocked. Most of us were crying because it was the first time civilians were positive about us when it came to the Vietnam War. And he said it had rippled through the department in such a major way that we started to realize that not everyone against the war was a bad person, and that we started investigating who the agitators were that were giving the anti-war movement a bad name. And I went, really? How amazing. And he said that your courage gave us courage. And I'm going, oh my goodness, I was just 29 looking like this, with blue-green hair. And I'm going, a police officer's telling me I have courage? And I'm going, wow. And so that really spurred me on to really think about when I am hurt and I want to retaliate and hurt back, there's got to be another way. And so my brain has been rewired to think that way, so that instead of seeing wrong, 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 and being part of that, is there a creative way to deal with a situation? And I have to say, sometimes you have to walk away. You know, there are some relationships that will never work, no matter how much you love someone, and you have to walk away in order to have peace. But in the meantime, there are other things that can be done. And you know, I was one of the speakers at the Buddhist temple in Japantown yesterday with South Bay Queer and Asian. They want to be more welcoming, you know, of the LGBTQ community, so they had, you know, their own Buddhist keynote speakers and blah, 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 blah. And then they asked me, so, you know, I said, you know, lesbians, gay men, transgender people, non-binary people don't necessarily by nature get along together. Just like Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese people don't, you know, naturally get along together. And they said, good analogy. And I said, so the challenge is, because the dominant culture doesn't like us, we have to like each other and support each other. And so that's why I was in the Veterans Parade with a big sign, support transgender veterans and those in the military. And the people in the military were cheering us on, and so was the crowd. So even though I'm not transgender, I can support transgender people and need to bring strength to each part of our communities so that we are all one in terms of supporting each other. And I remember when I'm on the police chief's community advisory board as the LGBT representative, and there was a whole thing where this cute police officer would go to a public bathroom and go to gay men and say, hey, and if they responded, he would arrest them for lewd conduct. So now there's a mass lawsuit against the police department for targeting gay people in public bathrooms. And our new chief has a new policy that will never happen again.
Okay.
Yeah, and that you can thank our LGBTQ committee on the police department. So here's how the mindset has to be. So of course the press came to me and said, okay, so what do you tell the soccer moms whose kids are using the bathroom that the gays are using and doing lewd things in the bathroom? So my answer was, we need to have a public discussion about mixed use of buildings.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
I like that.
The police chief called me and said, that was brilliant.
That's
Because
right.
I didn't want anyone to be wrong. And the press sort of shook their head and played that interview for days because it was such a different perspective. So there are ways to think differently. And the mystery for me is there are times I don't know where it comes from. And that's the mystery of spirit. You know, I was asked to be on the board of the DeFrank Center. And I went, yay, I haven't had a gay life in a long time, even though I've been openly gay, running my own nonprofit about substance use prevention, trying to keep kids safe from easy access to alcohol and drugs, but I was openly gay, but had no gay life. Because when you're the executive director of a nonprofit, that's all you do. I don't know if you know anyone that does that. asked to be on the board. I went, yay, a gay life. So anyway, I ended up having two loves, two passionate loves. And you know, you can have affairs, that's manageable. But to have two passionate loves, I find impossible. So I had to let go of my substance use prevention organization. Mind you, I was told by the high-ups in the county who loved me, where I got our funding, that small organizations would not survive the merger between alcohol and drugs and mental health. I saw that as a sign. And then who knew I would be the board president the next month. So when the elections happened, you know, I thought, wow, I have fought for Aboriginal land rights, and I don't know if Native Americans have had this happen, but every time they were about to have a demonstration, drugs seemed to be among them mysteriously, so they got high and drunk and never made it to the demonstration. And they were planted. They didn't have the money to pay for all of that. So I met with Aboriginal leaders and I said, if you can't get clean and sober for yourself, do it for the cause. And just make sure you have certain strong people that get rid of the drugs before your demonstration. And then you will have your own spirit and your own power, and start looking at what kind of treatment program would work for Aboriginal people, because what the white people are doing doesn't work for you. And we know this, you know, since then. And so they did, they followed through on that. And that again was creative thinking coming from spirit. And so I got involved in women's liberation. You know, in Australia, if you want to bring an issue to the public, you know, we have this thing. If a candidate brings up an issue, then every other candidate has to address it. So what women's liberation would do is set up candidates just to bring up the issue. And then the gays followed and did that too. And so there were all these national discussions about women's and LGBTQ issues. So it was great. Now, American system is very different, but that's okay. I have learned how it works here. I'm not an expert at it, but I do have relationships with all the elected officials. And they are fun to work with, because what I can't get done here, I might be able to get done there. You know, I don't make anyone wrong, because the issues that I have fought for, Aboriginal issues, women's issues, LGBTQ issues, are bipartisan issues. Substance use prevention, bipartisan issues. And you'd be surprised who's for it and who's not. And so it's an adventure. And I never stop, because I am so in love with the spirit that I've been given, that carries me and gives me strength ever since I was 6 years old. And I may get upset, but I don't stay upset long. I have such a network of people I can talk to. Because the thing is, I am human. I am spirit. I have a mind that can think creatively. What more would anyone ever want? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Woo.
mean,
Yeah.
so, I'm running out of time. I want to say that in 1995, we initiated the AIDS Grove right by the Children's Discovery Museum it has been sorely neglected. And as a community center, and I have been looking for a way to bring the HIV consciousness back to the Billy DeFrank Center. So we want to bring back the AIDS Grove, which will take a ton of money and creativity and maintenance. And Marilee Jennings, who's the CEO of the Children's Discovery Museum, I'm on her LGBTQ advisory board. That's why they now have a button with their logo and a rainbow in it. She is supporting the cause. And because December 1st will probably be very cold, she is giving us her theater to have World AIDS Day in.
Wow,
yeah.
great,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Supervisor Cindy Chavez is the MC because she was there back then as a city council member, and it's still in her territory as a supervisor. Ronnie is going to sing, Janet Childs is going to sing and take us out, and we have some fabulous speakers, including Michelle Liu from the Health Trust. She is a wonderful human being. And Dr. Gupta from the PACE Clinic will talk about the new innovations in medicine, and I don't know, it's just going to be a great celebration.
Are you going to have some of the quilt there?
No,
Oh,
the
darn.
quilt will be at City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have cards in the back for World AIDS Day. On December 3rd, there'll be the flag raising, the quilt will be in the rotunda, and then there'll be a vigil at night. But on December 1st, it's going to be the celebration of light, and what we're honoring is the people who died and the people who are still here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ronnie Grigsby will be one of our lights.
Yay!
So that is part of our commitment to bring that back. And I want to thank you all for listening. What triggered this talk is that I found out that Osama bin Laden had no agenda, but he said that when you hurt people, they will drop their values. And America did not want to get into torture anywhere in the world until 9/11 happened. And then they brought back waterboarding and blah, blah, blah. And Osama bin Laden won. And we don't have to be that way, you know? And some people don't even have an agenda in your life. They just want to create chaos. And they're the people that I step away from. And they're the people I educate my friends about. Do not engage, you know? And as in Star Trek they say, disengage. It's very important to know that not everyone has the light yet. And I want to maintain my light. I don't want to drop my values. I don't want to be challenged time and time again. There is too much work to do. So thank you.
Hey. Wow. Okay. I know that many of you haven't heard Gabrielle before, but her energy is so, it's catching, and it really is infectious. And now, Reverend Ronnie Grigsby, I know you have to be at Levi Stadium very shortly. Could you please honor us with a song? I'm taking that walking this way as a yes.
There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of my God. There's a sweet expression on each face, and I know that this expression is from God. Sweet Holy Spirit, sweet heavenly power, stay right here with us, filling us with your love. And for this blessing, we lift our hearts in praise. Without a doubt, we know that we have been revived when we shall leave this place.
Okay, Ronnie, you have, what, 5 minutes to make it to Levi? Corky, are you ready to go with him?
Yeah, I'm just turning on the.
Okay. We kidnapped him today and said we'd make sure he got where he's supposed to be.
Giving to the ministry, from which we receive our spiritual support and nurturing, is an affirmation and consciousness of the truth that spirit is a prospering power, enriching every area of our lives. All I get comes back to me.